Good evening. I'd like to welcome members, officers and members of the public watching at home to this Finance, Audit and Risk Committee. This committee plays an important role in the overall governance of the Council. Good governance has many benefits, including helping the Council to make effective decisions, improve performance and be able to respond to risks and opportunities. Before the meeting starts, the Chair and Vice Chair have sent their apologies. Therefore, we need to elect a chair for this meeting. Could I please have nominations for a member to act as chair for this meeting only?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Tom Plater as chair, please.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? All right, we need to go to a vote then, please. That motion is carried. Councillor Pater, you are chair for this meeting. Just hold one moment while we rearrange.
Thank you all. Can I invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to explain how proceedings will work and confirm that officers in remote attendance are present?
Thank you. Can I confirm the following people are online and can hear us? Debbie Hanson.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Rachel Meres. Darren Bowler. Okay, we will check back a little bit later for those two. Rules of debate. If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. Please wait for the chair's invitation before you begin. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room, and the results will be visible on the YouTube stream. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will have the casting vote. Are there any questions before we start the meeting? I'll hand back to the chair.
Thank you, and welcome to this meeting of the Finance, Audit and Risk Committee. Item 1 is apologies for absence. I've received apologies for absence from Councillors Sean Nolan and Terry Tyler. Are there any further apologies? Not. Thank you very much all. Item number 2 is the minutes from the 31st of January 2024. I'd like to propose that we take as read and approve as a true record the minutes of the meeting held on the 31st of January 2024. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Any comments on the minutes? No. If not, I will take that to a vote, please.
Chair, that motion's carried.
Thank you very much. Item 3 is the notification of other business, and no other business has been notified. Item 4, Chair's announcements. In accordance with Council policy, this meeting is being recorded and the recording will be available to view on ModGov or via the NHDC YouTube channel. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under Chair's announcements on the agenda. For the purposes of clarification, 4.8.23a of the Constitution does not apply to this meeting. Therefore, a member may leave the room during the debate and consideration of that item and be able to vote. However, please be mindful of the business on the agenda and wherever possible, leave at an appropriate point in the proceedings. I have agreed to a change of order of the published agenda, and item 11 will now take place following item 5. Item 5 is public participation, and we have no public participation this evening. So we'll move on to item 11, which is clearing the external audit backlog, and I'll hand over to Ian Cooper to present.
Thank you, Chair. I think, as hopefully all the committee are aware, the external audit of accounts for local government is not in a good place. There are huge backlogs around, and we're actually kind of one of the lucky ones in that we only got 1 year's accounts outstanding. Government have realised that, and it's been known for some time that something needs to happen. And they, on the 8th of February, DULUC, the Department for Housing, Local Levelling Up and Communities, launched a consultation in relation to that. That was done in conjunction with a range of bodies, as detailed in paragraph 8.1 of the report, and had 3 phases: reset, recovery, and reform. The idea being initially that we would just get to a place where we could just clear the backlog, which is the reset phase. And essentially, come what may, that means that will happen by the 30th of September. There's then a few years of recovery to basically set a series of dates coming slowly backwards in time for each year, such that by the time we get to the end of it, we've got a kind of system that should work. And the reform phase, whilst not detailed at this stage, is basically trying to make the whole process a bit simpler, looking where there can be changes to make it both simpler in terms of the accounts being prepared, but also importantly, there's less to prepare, there's less to audit, and so therefore the audit process is quicker as well. Alongside that, there's also things around audit firms working to improve how they get more staff, basically, to get people to do the actual audits. I will briefly run through kind of some of the key bits in terms of dates from the report, but then I will ask Debbie Hanson from Ernst & Young to give her view about how Ernst & Young will deal with the fact that they're the auditor for the current year accounts. And then after that, I did ask if our auditor from KPMG was able to attend, but unfortunately Jessica's not able to attend tonight, but she did give me some words to sort of read out to you after that to kind of give the whole picture about what's likely to happen. Obviously, this stage is only a consultation, but I think it's likely to happen, to be honest. You'll see from the report, the consultation response we've done, which is fairly well aligned to some of the others I've seen from some of the kind of the bodies that kind of represent councils, which is basically saying something needs to happen. This is good as it's going to get in terms of how we get this back on track. So the key date for this coming year is in relation to the 2022-2023 accounts and earlier. Obviously for us, it only affects 22-23. And basically the backstop date of the 30th of September 2024 for all those accounts to be signed off. By signed off, that doesn't necessarily mean they've all been fully audited. There's just not enough time for that. And there is the option that in most cases, that will be a disclaimed opinion, whereby the audit work hasn't taken place fully or at all, but they're signed off nonetheless on that basis. And as I said, Debbie from EY will come on to all that to see what that means for her and her team. And then in the later years, there's obviously a need to then catch up from that. As soon as you have one disclaimed opinion based on the fact there's limited scope of audit work done, in a subsequent year, they have to catch up on that, because usually the auditor will just audit the current year and place reliance on the opening balances. But where there's no audit on the opening balances, they have to go back and somehow audit the opening balances as well. As I'll come on to, it's likely to be that it takes a few years to get back to normal. I'm hoping that I'll be able to give you the message and public the message that a limited scope opinion is not a bad thing. It's just a necessary thing. And hopefully I can message out to any kind of the public out there who's taken interest in this as well, that this is not an issue of the council. This is the general issues, just a way to resolve it. There has been, the conversation does include a little bit around trying to simplify the process for the current year in relation to a bit around asset valuations and pension disclosures in the accounts. Not a significant impact for us. We probably could have coped with the 2 things there, but we'll obviously take advantage of that. The one area in our response as a council, I did respond back on was the fact that there's still a date of the 31st of May in there for next year, for 2025, for 2 things. One, for the backstop for the approval of the 23-24 accounts, and also that's still a date for the preparation of the So there's the date in this year of the 31st of May still for the completion of this year's accounts, the 23-24 accounts. In the submission, I made a point that I didn't see the point as to why setting that deadline was necessary. I think a later deadline makes sense, particularly to give the councils who are doing their accounts time to do those, particularly they may demand some audit time. We're trying to kind of clear that backlog. So it makes sense that deadline to be extended. I don't know what's happened with that yet. But even if that deadline is still there are kind of accepted principles that deadline is not actually a hard and fast deadline anymore. Obviously, we look to get back to that being a hard and fast deadline in future, but it has been sort of relaxed over time. And the second point I want to take us into relation to the following year, whereby the current backstop date for the approval by this audit committee of the accounts for 23-24 is the 31st of May next year. I don't think that's a very sensible date to choose. There obviously could be changes, not maybe for us, but certainly for other committees, whereby you have changes each year for annual councils, members of the committee. To expect someone as an audit committee to approve accounts in their first meeting seems a bit unfair, because obviously it's quite a big responsibility to do, and obviously quite a lot of details to try and take in fairly soon after maybe you've had an annual council. So those are kind of points I've made back in our response, as well as kind of being generally supportive. What I plan now to do is to hand over to Debbie Hanson online if she wants to sort of run through the Ernst & Young position.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Hopefully you can hear me. Yes, good. That's a relief. I was at a committee on Monday where nobody remotely could be heard, which wasn't great. So in relation to where we are for 22-23, I guess just going back initially, we obviously completed your 21-22 audit and issued our opinion in September 23. Which is obviously significantly behind where we would ideally want to be on a normal year, as we were auditing a number of years ago, which we would have been issuing audit opinions within the same financial year, in effect, as your year end. And obviously we are some way off that at the moment, which is why there is such a significant issue across the whole system. So following the announcements of the Minister in July regarding the proposals to look at the local audit system and set some backstop dates, we took a decision at that point that we would align a strategy to the announcements at that point, and that meant that we would focus our efforts on completing audits that were substantially complete for any older years, and that obviously included your 21-22 audit. And then we would also focus on bringing value for money work up to date, and also focus on auditing pension funds. Obviously, you don't have a pension fund, but we're clearly focusing on that where we do audit the relative pension funds. So we continued with that strategy, and we've made good progress on your value for money work for 22-23. So that work is now substantially complete and needs to be subject to review. And then we will report that. We would plan to bring that to your next committee meeting as an interim value for money report. The reason that would be interim is because we can't fully conclude our value for money work until we actually issue our opinion, because we then have to issue those two reports together. So we would update that assessment for any further information that came to light that might change the conclusions or shed any further light on the arrangements that were in place during 22-23. So that's what we've been focusing on at the moment. I guess just then to move on to kind of the financial statements position. So as Ian has said, the intention that we have is that we would be moving to disclaim opinions where we had not substantially completed the audit work, and therefore your 22-23 audit would fall into that category. This would be a sort of legislation or technical disclaimer, so it would be quite different than a normal disclaimer. So normally where an auditor issues a disclaimer on the financial statements, that's saying that we cannot get sufficient evidence to enable us to issue an audit opinion. In this, and which would obviously be a negative reflection on the arrangements the council had in place. Clearly, that's not the position here, because we're not saying that we could not get sufficient assurance. What we're saying is we would not be able to complete the audit by the backstop date, and are therefore moving to a disclaimer opinion. And what we don't want to do is start to do audit work, not be able to complete audits, still move to disclaimers, and have put pressure on your finance teams to support the audit and incurred additional costs in that audit work as well. So we've taken that decision as a firm. We will revisit that decision if anything substantially changes following the outcome of the consultation. So the consultations have now concluded with the exception of the SIPFA code. But what we don't know is what DLUC and FRC will conclude once they've analysed all of the feedback that's come from the various different stakeholders. So what that will mean in terms of when we can issue that disclaimer, we need to issue those before the end of September. We'll issue them as soon as we can. And once we can do that, we can also conclude our value for money work and issue our auditor's annual report, which would then conclude our audit work on 22-23. Ian touched on what that might mean for your successor auditors, KPMG. I can't obviously comment on specifically what they will do, but my understanding and the way we are approaching it, where we are continuing as auditors of councils that are in the same position as you, is that disclaimer continues to have an impact on the subsequent 2 years of financial statements. So in 23-24, there would be the impact that Ian has referred to. So there'd be no assurance over the opening balances, and there also wouldn't be assurance over the comparative figures which are in the financial statements in a number of areas. That would then flow through to a less significant degree in 24-25, but there would still be some balances that would be impacted by those prior year limitations in effect. And so there would be a residual impact in the subsequent year. My understanding is there's this discussion with FRC, DLUC and all audit firms in terms of the form of disclaimers that will be issued and the wordings to be used to ensure as much consistency as possible. And I would assume also in terms of the approach to be taken in subsequent years. I don't think we're expecting that there's any magic wand that can be waived in relation to removing the impact of those in subsequent years, because that wouldn't be compliant with auditing or accounting standards. But I think FRC obviously are looking at that along with DLUC in terms of making sure, again, that there's a consistent understanding of what that means for subsequent years' audits. I think just in terms of the comments that Ian made regarding the May deadline, we very much recognise that, and that's why we've got the strategy that we have, which is aiming to bring the system back onto a more timely footing as soon as possible. And I think just the other point to note is that there's been a lot of focus on the audit backlog. And I think the audit backlog has arisen because of system-wide issues, not necessarily all related to kind of capacity within audit firms. There's the complexity of local authority financial statements, which has significantly increased over recent years. There's also the additional requirements and expectations of regulators in terms of the audit work that's undertaken. And then there have also been issues with capacity and skills within local authority finance teams. I'm not saying that's an issue at North Hertfordshire District Council, where our audits have gone very smoothly, but that is an issue that has impacted on a number of audits which have caused significant delays across the system and taken additional resources. One of the things the backstops aim to do is to stop audits just continuing, and which some audits have gone on for years and years. It sets a clear backstop by which there's a date at which if an auditor has not been able to conclude the audit work, they will finish and report. And therefore the idea of that is to get the system back onto a more timely basis and a more even keel. Very unprecedented times. I've been in public sector audit for over 30 years and have never been in a situation such as this. And so it is very challenging. There's a large number of stakeholders involved in trying to resolve the issue. And that's why it's particularly complex. And I think it'd be very important that there's good messaging, both from individual councils, but also from FRC as a system leader and other key stakeholders in terms of what the reset means and what disclaimers mean in this very unusual scenario. I know it's, like I said, very complex, very unusual, but I'm very happy to take any questions and try to answer them as well as I can.
So as I said, I'll just quickly run through what the update we've had from Jessica Hargreaves, who is the director at KPMG and our audit lead. Just to let you know, she will be coming, for those of on the committee next year, the first meeting next year to present the audit plan. So you'll get a chance to meet her then. So some of this repeat what I've said previously, but I'll just read out the statement in full just to make sure you've got the full picture from what KPMG is saying. So their technical accounting team are still in discussion with the various stakeholders, the FRC, PSAA and NAO, regarding the impact of disclaimer opinions on future audit opinions. Obviously, as I said, this is still a consultation, but we are sort of treating it as this will happen, but therefore no final decisions have been made as yet on that. as I said previously, because of the disclaimer opinion, KPMG will not have assurance over all opening balances in the balance sheet and the movement in reserve statements. The expected impact, although not definite yet, is a limitation in scope in KPMG audit opinions regarding impacted balance in future years. So that's sort of what Debbie said in terms of it's not going to be gone away in a year. Duration of the impact will vary between entities depending on the volume of years of accounts that are outstanding. Obviously, if that's only one, so it's not so bad. And then also kind of movements between years and how that affects things as well. But KPMG is saying they'll adopt a consistent approach. Doesn't have the same answer for everyone, but it's a consistent approach across all the entities that are impacted by this. They've said that now they're aware of what Ernst & Young are doing, because obviously I fed back once I was aware what Ernst & Young were planning. I've had meetings in the middle of the week. They can now plan for that and work out what that's going to mean specifically. It will need for basically Ernst & Young to finish all their work and issue their audit opinion before KPMG can do anything. They are doing work at the moment on getting to know us and looking at our kind of systems and how they work, and also doing their value for money stuff for 23, 24, which they can do. But they can't do any testing, any substantive testing, until basically Ernst & Young are done their bits. So that then sets that basically October, before it'll be October, they can do anything at all. But they'll aim to, once we're into October, aim to get on with it as quick as they can. But yeah, they're keeping that under review as to how quick that will be. And just sort of general statement, so they're committed to getting the local government audits back on track. But yeah, as I said, just don't expect you all gone away straight away. And then some of the stuff around sort of timing is due to the auditing regulations, which clearly state that they can't do any work until Ernst & Young have done their bit. So yeah, that's a summary from KPMG. As Debbie said, she'd have to take questions. I have to take questions, and also have to take the questions back to KPMG as well.
Thank you very much, Ian, and thank you, Debbie, for joining us tonight. Are there any questions from the committee? Yes, Councillor Hone.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I guess there's only one which comes out from this, and understanding the background, I understand where we are, and we're not unusual. But is the switch from Ernst & Young to KPMG having an impact? Or are you going to tell us, no, there's no impact, the fact we are switching our auditors?
There was always going to be an impact from the switching auditors because KPMG got to get to know us. Obviously, Ernst & Young have been auditing us for a number of years now. So we have seen more requests from KPMG than we would expected from Ernst & Young for the same kind of work. But that's part of our life, I guess, in terms of that change. We have gone through most of that now. So we have been providing responses to lots of their queries and walkthroughs of our systems. So probably over that hump now. But you know, KPMG are sort of new to the market and have been able to get quite a lot of auditor resource. So they are sort of doing their best to get back on track with their work. I'm not saying Ernst & Young wouldn't have done that as well if they've still been auditor, but yeah, we have seen auditors around, and they are working with us. So I think it's positive. If we're doing positive either way, we've got the change we needed, and then we can move forward.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. My question's about the at which point do we think we're going to see a normal pattern sort of stabilize? You sort of mentioned in their units of years, and I know that there's the reform phase, and then there might not be full clarity, but at which point do we think we'll see the audit pattern normalizing? It seems to me it seems like a good thing that there's this work happening to clear the backlog, but I'm keen to understand at what point we're not going to be sort of taking an abridged approach to our audit.
I mean, I guess there is we have to accept the 23-24 accounts are highly likely to be another disclaimed opinion. That's the first set of accounts from KPMG when they audited them. That will be disclaimed opinion. There is a chance, I'm not going to commit yet as to how much of a chance, but probably a small chance of 24-25 not being disclaimed, but probably assume it is going to be, which means 25-26 are the most likely to be the first year, I would say, when we'd have a normal audit opinion, going back at a full review of the accounts and opening and closing balances. Obviously, as you'll see in the reports, there is provision that it's not until 26-27 we get back to the new normal timelines, and the audits from that year having to be completed by the 30th of November for 25, 26 to the 31st of January in 2027. So still quite a long period. But I'd say probably almost normal 25, 26, and then completely normal for 26, 27 onwards. And that's the year audit of those years, which of the dates that come after those years, because you can't audit until the accounting year end is completed.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. John Cannon.
Thank you, Chair. Couple of things. Yes, it's very welcome to clear the backlog. I remember last year, I think the accounts were about 12 months after the year end, and at that stage in the game, going concerns self-evident, isn't it? So there's that. Just looking ahead a little bit and beyond the strict auditing piece, conscious that there's a new financial system coming in over 24-25, which coincides with reduced audit attention for all the reasons you discussed. Inherently, that would increase audit risk. What's our position on that? And I'd note that the Internal Audit Service is going to get involved. I saw it in the other paper. So there is that. But the other slant is, what does it mean with KPMG? Are they going to be preoccupied clearing a bigger backlog to our detriment, or do we just slot naturally into their schedule, please?
In terms of new finance system, yeah, SIAS involvement in that is probably quite key. Obviously, as you appreciate, the first year that KPMG be auditing would be this current year, and we're still under the current financial system anyway. So the transactions are from that system. It's not until we get to the 24-25 audit that they'll be reliant on the new system to produce the accounts. But we are taking all the transactions the 1st of April 24 into the new system, even though God, not to August. So we'll have a complete year of data on our new financial system to work from for the 24-25 accounts. So I think there is assurance there. We are working with an established provider of finance systems to local authorities, so we will work with them and we will get a system in place that works. In terms of how we slot in with KPMG, it's been positive so far in terms of the amount of time they've been spending with us. So they are asking lots of questions and getting lots of data from us. As I say, it's not on the substantive testing on the actual transactions yet, but it is the background stuff. And they are saying that they will be starting work on that detailed work in sort of October time of this year. I think it's sort of reassuring that in a way that the approach they're taking is to have a consistent approach of basically disclaimed opinions for a longer period of time. Obviously, the approach could be you try and clear a few authorities and really focus on those and get those fully done, and then sort of leave some by the wayside a bit. But actually, I think their approach of actually doing a decent amount on everyone, but having a bit of a disclaimed opinion probably makes sense in terms of bringing everyone slowly up to track going forward, rather than being a focus on a few authorities and then others missing out. So I think it's, whilst not completely positive, it's probably the right answer.
John, I have one question around this, and that is on the 8.10. The report notes that there may be an impact on the audit fees that we need to pay. I was just wondering whether we have an estimation of how much more that might be, and whether there's been any talk of compensation for something that's obviously not our fault.
So the initial impact will be that in each year, the audit fee will reflect the amount of work the auditor has done in relation to that year. So you've heard from Debbie that Ernst & Young always do a lot of work on the VFM conclusion. That's always part of their audit fee is on that, and so therefore they will have naturally earned that money for that bit of the audit work. They will be doing less work than is set out in the general scale fee for the other bits of their audit. They'll still be doing some work to get to a conclusion, even though it's a limited scope one. And so therefore it's looking likely that the audit fee we pay to Ernst & Young will be lower than usual for that year. But KPMG will need to do more work in future years to get back up to track on where they would be usually have been if they started off with a fully kind of audited and approved set of accounts at the start of the year. So overall, probably the amount of work in total is probably about the same. It's just going to be split between different years and therefore different audit fees. It's also worth reflecting back, which I think has been made clear to committee in the past, the scale fees for kind of this year, but the year which has been in and going forward are much higher than they have been in the previous years. That reflects the fact that the requirements on our auditors are much higher. So the knock-on impacts of some of the accounting scandals in the private sector has meant that the Financial Reporting Council requirements to do more work, which therefore means more audit fees, because more work is more fees. We have, in some of recent years, had grant from government to kind of cover that additional cost. Not had any indication yet of how that's going to continue for. So it could be a cost we've got to find in the council going forward. But that's not to the backlog, that's just to do with the fact that the audit system has changed. Whether some of the work that as part of the kind of the reform phase reduces some of that audit work is yet to be seen. I guess if that does reduce it again, you then see another reduction in the scale fees, the audits. At this stage, I can't really answer your question completely, but that's kind of the pitch about the direction we might be heading in.
If it's helpful, PSA are actually looking at the moment in terms of the fees for the years that will be disclaimed. So they've asked for information, I assume, from all audit firms around what we will need to do to issue a disclaimer opinion. So that will not be sort of the normal substantive testing. It's just the work that's necessary to support issuing that type of opinion. Once they've, and along with our value for money work, once they've gathered that, they will make a determination as to what the appropriate fee will be for the disclaimed years. And so, because we're part of the PSA contract, that is very much something that they will determine rather than the individual audit firms. But we are providing information that PSA are asking us to provide in relation to that, and they will, as I said, reach a view in relation to that position. And I just wanted to pick up on something that was referred to before in relation to the going concern assessment. So the going concern assessment, in both that the council makes in terms of the accounts and our view on that, covers a period of 12 months from the date of the audit report. So as we issued your audit report in September 23, that assessment took you forward to a period of September 24. So I think that is of value in the current environment. So that did sort of say that the council's reserves cash flow position up to the end of September 24 was sufficient. And part of the reason we are doing our value for money work and pulling all of that forward is because as part of that, we also look at the council's arrangements for financial resilience. And so as part of the work we're doing at the moment, we're looking at your budget setting, budget monitoring, medium-term financial strategy, and a number of those areas in relation to 22-23. So hopefully that will give both members of this committee, but also the residents of North Hertfordshire, some assurance around the sort of financial position and financial resilience of the council, which we know is very high profile at the moment based on some of the pressures that councils are facing.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Are there any other questions for Ian or Debbie from the committee? If not, the recommendation is that the committee notes this report, including the implications on the approval of the statement of accounts for 22-23 onwards. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Lucas, thank you. And can I have a seconder? Councillor Thomas, thank you. We will now go to the debate. Is there any debate from councillors? If not, then we will move to the vote.
Chair, that motion's carried.
Thank you very much. We will now move to item number 6, which is the SAF's Anti-Fraud Plan 2023-24 Progress Update, and that's Darren Bowler to present.
Good evening, Chair. Can everybody hear me? Good, thank you. There's a little problem earlier on. Yes, good evening, Chair. Good evening, members. For those I've not had the pleasure of meeting, I'm Darren Bowler. I am a counter-fraud manager at the Shared Anti-Fraud Service. The service lead, Nick Jennings, is on leave this week, so he sends his apologies. The first item that we have before you is the update on the progress and delivery of the fraud plan, which is for you to note. It's a brief report. The fuller details of the activity for the financial year will be provided at the next meeting that we attend. So I'm going to bring to you some highlights and just go through some of the numbers. So there's been 81 referrals up until the date of the report of fraud, and that's pretty much consistent with what we've seen in previous years. The split has been evenly between members of the public and staff at the authority. We carried over this year 13 cases from the end of last year, and we currently have 23 cases in the referral stage as well. So there is work to be done on those investigations. So far, we've closed 10 cases and closed 33 reviews. Those reviews are mainly around council tax, and that has identified losses and savings, a combined total of £42,000. Of note is a long-running investigation that finally concluded in February, with a sentence of the offender being sent to prison for 20 months for fraud in relation to COVID grants. One matter outstanding on that currently, which is the financial investigation, and that continues. Various stages have been complied with on behalf of us, and we're waiting for a court hearing to deal with any confiscation arising out of the Proceeds of Crime Act for that defendant. We've kept up the campaign of prevention throughout the year, circulating alerts from both national and local law enforcement and other government agencies. We've supported the authority in dealing with the national fraud exercise, a total of 667 matches, of which the vast majority, 545, have now been reviewed, and that has resulted in the loss stroke savings, again a combined figure of £69,000. That's a lot of work that's been done by officers at the authority. We have supported that work, but the lion's share and the thanks from us go to those officers involved at North Herts completing those reviews of those matches. We've also been running at the same time the Fraud Hub, which is a very similar data matching exercise to the national exercise, the NFI. It's local. It's managed by us in conjunction with the authority on uploading data at various stages. And between quarters 1 and 3 so far this year, there's been 661 matches, of which 261 of those have already identified savings of £17,000. That's what I wanted to bring to you in the way of highlights. I'm content to take any questions from members in the chair.
Thank you, Darren. Do we have any questions for Darren from the committee? If not, thank you very much. The recommendation is that the Finance, Audit and Risk Committee notes the progress made by the Shared Anti-Fraud Service on delivering the 2023-24 anti-fraud plan. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Lucas, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Thomas, thank you. Can we go to debate, please? There is no debate. We will move to the vote.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item 7, which is the Shared Anti-Fraud Service Proposed Anti-Fraud Plan 2024-25. And I'll hand back to Darren Bowler to present.
Thank you, Chair. So this anti-fraud plan before you is for you to review and approve. I'd just like to start with highlighting the beginning of the plan. There are 4 external reports referenced. All the reports are very relevant, but I'd like to draw the members of this committee's attention to one in particular, which is the Lost Homes, Lost Hope. This relates to the cost of tenancy fraud. It's a relatively new piece of work that's been done. And whilst this authority does not hold stock, it is relevant to the housing allocations team and the team that deals with temporary accommodation on behalf of the authority. And it may also support and assist explanation of some of the ongoing issues within that sector. And I think members may find that very helpful when dealing with constituents. The plan that you have before you is very similar to this year's current plan, setting the strategy, identifying officers, members holding roles in defining the plan, including the role of this committee and the KPIs that have been agreed with officers for the next financial year. We've been working closely with the service areas where higher risks may be present in developing the plan. Projects and work plans have been discussed and agreed to meet those risks and any additional needs. The plans detailed at your page of bundle, page 32, and the KPIs are at page 33. They follow the main plan in the appendices. Chair, I've given a brief overview of that plan. As I say, it's not overly complicated or very different from the current year's plan. So I've kept that brief, and should there be any questions, I'm happy to take them now.
Thank you, Darren. Are there any questions from the committee? Yeah, Councillor Thomas.
So I was wondering if you could just take us through the pursue section verbally. I find that helpful. Thank you.
Sorry, you broke up on which section would you like?
The pursue strand of work.
Pursue. Let me just bring that up. So, whilst every effort is there to prevent fraud, we know that it's inevitable that fraud will happen, and it does happen in every organisation. We first of all will look to put the situation right with the individuals that have are responsible for the fraud, and that's particularly relevant in the council tax arena, where we do appreciate people do get things wrong sometimes, and fraud and error are very similar, and sometimes people will misunderstand. So let's get it put right first. Let's speak to the individuals concerned, and if there's any doubt, we'll do that and make sure it's right. If what we're seeing, and from our initial inquiries, when the cases are referred to us, so they stay with our intel team for a short period of time, where we develop intelligence, understand what the allegation's about, and see what else we can find to either support or disprove the allegation. So once we're happy that we're content that we have an allegation, we will then go on to look to deal with an appropriate disposal option. What does that look like? Well, that depends on the nature of the allegation. Within council tax arena, there is civil penalties that can be applied, and that's all at a local level. If we're looking at something that affects the council across a wider area, that's more serious, that has a ongoing effect or has been going on for a period of time, then the redress needs to be and appropriately dealt with. All of the decision-making process is dealt with in collaboration with the authority and the appropriate service heads, and we will then make a decision in collaboration with not just the service head, but the head of legal, to decide whether it is appropriate to take any further criminal action or civil action against anybody in those circumstances. once the investigation has reached a stage, and that point is quite mobile throughout the investigation, we issue to the service head and any other relevant individuals at the authority what we call an executive report. So we'll identify the bits that may be needing reinforcement to prevent this happening in the future. It may be that it's a circumstance that no one has ever thought of occurring and hasn't been accounted for. So we'll provide some support and draw from the learning of the situation how that can be best prevented going forward, so we can effectively plug the hole which allowed that issue to arise. Is there anything else I can help with on the pursue front for you, Councillor?
That there was one case of imprisonment, and I'm just sort of interested in understanding the thresholds. I'm just very conscious of the extent of the housing crisis and housing shortages, and I'm just trying to make sure I get my head around the thresholds at which imprisonment would be an outcome.
Well, those thresholds for there's a complete separation between the two areas. So the decision to prosecute is one that's dealt with locally at the council, as I mentioned just a moment ago, with senior officers responsible for that service area and also the head of legal. Once it goes forward for prosecution, the ultimate disposal of sending someone to prison is a decision for the judicial system. It's not a decision for us. And that is based on legislation and the nature, seriousness and period of offending of the case. So in the one that you mentioned, there was a concerted effort over a long period of time. There was aggravating factors of the use of counterfeit or false documents. The gentleman in question initially was given a non-custodial sentence. As a result of further investigation that we were requested to make on behalf of the barrister prosecuting the case, we identified that the individual had used false documents to give to the court and the judge. And as a result of that, in December of last year, the individual was sentenced to a non-custodial sentence. As a result of the investigation, we identified that those documents were false and forged. He was brought back before the court and resentenced for the same offences, but on the knowledge that some of the character reference provided he had submitted were originally falsified. And I think the judge's words were that he was trying to pull the wool over the court's eyes. So the final ultimate disposal at court is a matter for the court. It's not a matter for the authority. In relation to housing, that's a different example, but I'm happy to discuss that with you at a later date if you'd like some further information.
Thank you very much, Darren. Are there any questions? Yes, John Cannon.
Only very briefly, thank you. The National Fraud Initiative I saw is yielding savings of 69,000 in the current year. Does anyone know the cost of taking part these days? I lose track. Thank you.
I'm going to defer to Ian, because Ian may know the exact figure, because the authorities pay the figure to partake in the NFI exercise. And I think it varies from authority to authority.
I will have to come back to you on that one. I can't know off the top of my head, but I will find out the answer and provide that by email.
Thank you, Darren, Ian, John. Are there any other questions for Darren on this item? If not, thank you, Darren. The recommendation is that the Finance, Audit and Risk Committee reviews and approves the anti-fraud plan for 24-25. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Thomas, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Lucas. Do we have any debate on the item? If not, then we will move to a vote.
And that motion's carried.
Thank you very much. Next item is item 8, which is the Shared Internal Audit Service Progress Report for 23-24. And I'll hand over to Chris to present.
There we go. Lights on now. I've left my glasses at home in my haste to get down here, so I'm going to look up from my report. I think I'm going to take it as read, but in the couple of weeks since it was written, we've made some quite nice progress on delivery of the plan. And you'll recall when I was last here, I was somewhat cautiously optimistic, which perhaps is another phrase of being cautiously pessimistic about delivering the plan, given the challenges we're facing. So I think we talked about organizational capacity when I was last here to support some of the audits, and that remains the case. And you'll know from my next item on the plan, we're carrying forward at least 4 of those audits with the agreement of officers at the council. Nonetheless, I report, Chair, that we've moved on to 73% of the days delivered, and that's in fact now 80%, which is actually quite good given the low base I was talking to the committee about in January. We've also delivered 3 more draft audit reports with the help of services around the council, and are grateful to them given the pressures they're under for supporting those. Looking at where we are today, with a couple of weeks to go until the Easter weekend and the end of the financial year, I'm hopeful that we could get 4 or 5 more draft reports out and be in the region of 76 to 80% of the plan delivered, which, given the challenges, it's not a bad outcome, actually. 4 audits definitely carried forward, as I say, with the agreement of the authority, and 1 potentially to be carried over as well. But given the number that were already stacked into Q4 and more audits that were pushed into Q4 given capacity issues, I think that's pretty decent at the moment, and should be on track to have delivered all of those audits by the time we come to this committee in May to deliver our annual assurance opinion. A couple of other things that, by virtue of the standards, I'm supposed to draw your attention to. One is the implementation of the last outstanding high priority recommendation, which you see in the report. Just bring your attention to that. And we are required to report changes to the plan in year, and there haven't been any actually this year until right at the end, when we've just changed the focus of the strategic plan consultancy piece. It's actually been turned into an assurance piece, more of a data-led audit around some of the controls in place within the planning application system, and around their performance reporting in terms of data quality. So I think I'll leave it there and take any questions, please.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any questions for Chris on this item? Yeah, we'll go Councillor Hone.
Yeah, thank you. You mentioned the 4 that are carrying forward. I'm trying to find them on the paper here. Perhaps I've missed them. Perhaps you could tell us what they are.
They were in the next paper, Councillor Hone. I can either scroll quickly down and find them. There was expecting houses and multiple occupation to be carried forward, estates audit to be carried forward, emergency planning will run over. That one's with the agreement of Ian. Timing somewhat determined by activity within the council as to whether there's something to audit or not. And the ongoing assurance on the Churchgate project is also being carried forward. And I mentioned there might be a 5th, but as I said, I'll have a quick scroll down, but can't guarantee I'll see it with my glasses at home.
Well, I found HMO.
Yep.
Which was infield work deferred to Q4.
Yep. Project management was the 5th that's likely to run over as well. Again, you and I have had conversations about that. So, but it's in the subsequent paper where I've specifically mentioned the inclusion of those 4 pieces in next year's audit plan on item 9, I think it is.
and the IT disaster recovery and business continuity, which says in field work.
So that one is now a draft audit report. That's one of the updates I was providing in the period since this paper was written. Draft reports actually been issued on that one. As it has on the Churchgate landlord compliance, another draft report issued on that one, and some grants work has also been completed.
Thank you.
Thank you all. John Cannon.
Thank you. Just a couple of details, please. On the landlord compliance review, you just tell me a little bit about compliance with what? And on the Churchgate project review, I appreciate that's going to be a review of the way the project is organised, but maybe it's a slightly oblique question to the service director. Do we know how far the project has got so far?
I will let Ian pick up the latter one. Compliance with what? So the council is the landlord for the Churchgate Centre, and as landlord, they have certain statutory responsibilities. So there'll be responsibilities, for instance, around some of the utilities and that type of thing, and health and safety and various other aspects of being a landlord. Those are out, I hope I have it correctly, with Brown and Lee to manage those responsibilities, although the council remains statutorily responsible. You can't outsource your responsibilities, but can outsource the carrying out of the actions related to the duties. And if I may pass to Ian on your second question, John.
Yeah, the council have appointed consultants to lead on the master planning process in relation to Churchgate. That is now led to more detailed design work with more consultants. We did that the expertise in-house with the aim of getting to the UK Reef event, which takes place over the summer. And that is I suppose, where everyone comes together to look at all the kind of potential projects in this kind of market in terms of property and regeneration, and we basically sell our opportunity and see what kind of interest we get in it. So then we come to the stage of actually going out to the market more generally for this is what we want to do. We've got some interest to take forward, and then we can do the regeneration work. But yeah, that's obviously a lot of design work and consultation work going on as part of that. And we're getting that to that event later in the summer.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Are there any other questions for Chris or Ian? If not, the recommendation is that the Finance, Audit and Risk Committee notes the Shared Internal Audit Service Progress Report for the period to 26th of February 2024, notes the implementation status of the reported high priority recommendations, and notes the plan amendments to the 23-24 annual audit plan. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Lucas, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Tandy, thank you. We'll go to the debate. As there's no debate, we will now go to the vote.
Chair, that motion's carried.
Thank you very much. The next item is item 9, which is the Shared Internal Audit Service Proposed Internal Audit Plan 2024-25. And I'll hand back to Chris Wood to present.
There we go. Lights come on. So this is your 24-25 audit plan for next year. Quite a detailed paper on how we go about planning. So I confine myself to a few basic points. It's been extensively consulted on with the service directors. We've used the council's risk register and delivery plan to sort of lead those discussions with the service directors. We've also brought the plan to the senior leadership team for final approval. But on the opposite side, the Finance, Audit and Risk Committee ultimately owns the plan on behalf of the authority, and obviously, as I've just done in my previous paper, monitors progress against it. So it's here for your approval on behalf of the authority before we can conduct any work in terms of it. I think because of the amount of detail in there, it might be easier to take any questions if there are any aspects that you would like me to try and elaborate on further, perhaps with the help of Ian as well.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any questions for Chris from the committee? If not, the recommendation is that the Finance, Audit and Risk Committee members approve the proposed North Herts District Council Internal Audit Plan for 2024-25. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Lucas, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Thomas, thank you very much. We'll now move to debate. Is there any debate on the item? If not, we will now move to the vote.
Chair, that motion's carried.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Chris, for those reports. Item 10 is the Local Code of Corporate Governance 2024 and Annual Governance Statement Action Plan Update 23-24. And I'll hand over to Georgina Chapman to present.
Hiya, thank you. So, the report highlights both the Local Code of Corporate Governance for 2024, which is at Appendix A, plus updates on the Annual Governance Statement Action Plan, which is for the 2023 to 24 year, but was outlined within the 2022 to 23 Annual Governance Statement, and that's at Appendix B. In terms of the local code, that is based on the Sit for Solace framework, which is delivering good governance in local government 2016 edition principles. So the code will form the basis for an assessment of the council's governance arrangements for the 2023 to 24 period. The code was last reviewed by this committee last March, and it's recommended good practice for it to be reviewed annually. The framework that's outlined in Appendix A is made up of 7 principles, so principles A to G, covers various aspects of governance, including commitment to ethical values, ensuring openness and engagement, developing capacity and capability, managing risk and performance, and implementing good practices in transparency and reporting to deliver effective accountability. If the code is approved by the committee, it will be put on the council's website on the corporate governance page, and it will be notified to members and staff via MIS and Insight. The code and the Sit for Solace framework will then provide the measure against which we conduct the annual governance statement for the 2023 to 24 period, that self-assessment. In terms of the AGS action plan update, I won't take you through all of those unless you want me to, but all of them are now marked as complete, apart from the first action, which is around increasing uptake of ethical awareness training. So I'll just quickly run over that. So there's been a 2 percentage point increase in staff uptake of fraud awareness training. So from 53% of staff to 55% of staff. These figures are all comparing May 2023 to January 2024. Also 2 percentage point increase in member uptake of fraud awareness. So from 16% to 18%. Anti-bribery staff uptake has stayed the same at 84%. While the uptake rate for members has increased 6 percentage points from 16% to 22%. So yeah, that's the only action that is still marked as ongoing. Everything else has been marked as complete. So it might be best if I ask for any questions there.
Thank you, Georgina. Are there any questions for Georgina on this item? Yeah, Councillor Tandy.
Thank you, Georgina. Can I just check, have there been any changes from 2023 at all? Yeah. No.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the committee? No, I have only one observation to make, and it's a very small point that it's page 91 in the pack, the numbering goes 45167.
Separate documents.
It's okay. It's on the.
Are we talking the local code or are we talking in the report?
It's in the local code, Principle F.
Ah,
Or oh no, ignore me. It's fine. It's first one under Principle G. Completely ignore all of that. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Yes, Councillor Thomas.
Thank you. And this is acknowledging that I might be not in the percentage of members who've taken training potentially, but that seems quite low. And I was just wondering if more militant actions can be taken to get it up, while noting completely my own position on that.
yeah. So Learning and Development have been working with the Shared Anti-Fraud Service, and they did attend a council meeting recently, but appreciate. So they went to a staff briefing earlier this week, perhaps last week, and to a senior management group meeting. So it's potentially been a bit more kind of skewed towards getting staff to take the training, but they did attend a council meeting as well. I don't know whether we can take any more militant action to improve the member figure, but Ian might want to comment.
It would be helpful to get a sense of how much officer time is sort of being spent on this.
Trying to improve that.
Yes, because I think everyone's aware of how tight that resource is, and this sounds like an old-fashioned boot from leaders might help.
Yeah, I was going to reflect on both the kind of officer and the member side of it. On the officer side, we've got a review by SIS next year. It's on the audit plan around mandatory training, basically. It's sort of picked up from here, and that will look at, I think, the wider piece around what we make as mandatory training and how we then enforce that. Because as you sort of observed, staff time is important, and we want to do their day job, but we also want to do training. It's important as well. So getting that right balance of mandatory training, and obviously got more power over our staff, so what make them do. But equally, yes, we would like members to do mandatory training as well. And obviously part of that's around support package, around the longer terms of the 4-year term from May will help us in terms of an evolving support for member training, which hopefully will help you find time, all of you, to do it. But also, I guess there will be a bit around trying to be more forceful around what is really necessary and making sure that's done as well. But it is getting that balance around what we make mandatory should be mandatory and therefore done, but we shouldn't make mandatory things mandatory for where it's kind of a bit of a grey area. So we need to get the balance right, basically. But then through support and that boot, hope we can get there.
Thank you, Ian. And thank you, Georgina. Are there any other questions from the committee? If not, the recommendation is that the committee approves the Local Code of Corporate Governance 2024, Appendix A, and notes the current position with the AGS Action Plan, Appendix B. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Thomas, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Lucas, thank you. We'll now move to debate. As there's no debate, we will go to the vote.
Chair, that motion's carried.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Georgina. Item 12 is the third quarter investment strategy, integrated capital and treasury. And I'll hand over to Ian Cooper to present.
Thank you, Chair. I'll do a brief introduction to report. So I'll first of all point to section 8.4, table 2, which sets out a range of schemes that are due to happen towards the end of the year, but will slip into next year. So all those there are asked to be slipped into next year because they're not going to be quite done in time. So asking to note all those, all quite low value, but there's obviously quite a list of them. Table 3 points out that at council a couple of weeks ago, we approved the allocation for the Howard Park kiosk work, and that also request that was brought forward this year. So notice that here in that table to make sure the numbers balance. So that's in there for that reason. Table 4 notes how the capital program will be funded. It's still being funded from capital receipts for this year, plus some section 106 and some other contributions as well, but not creating a drawdown into sort of beyond our available receipts at this point. The next part of the report focuses on treasury management, and 8.11 shows the headline split of our investments. weighted towards local authorities based on the fact that they are relatively low risk and also paying good yields at the moment. So that's where we tend to put our investments at the moment. And the full detail is in the table in paragraph 8.12 with all the investments we've got at the moment. That's my introduction, but have to take any questions.
Thank you, Ian. Are there any questions from the committee? If not, the recommendations for this item are that the Finance, Audit and Risk Committee provide comments and recommend to the Cabinet the third quarter investment strategy, Integrated Capital and Treasury Review 23-24. That Cabinet notes the forecast expenditure of 6.521 million in 23-24, and on the capital programme, paragraph 8.3 refers that Cabinet approves the adjustments to the capital programme for 23-24 onwards as a result of the revised timetable of schemes detailed in Table 2 and 3, increasing the estimated spend in 24-25 by 0.96 million. That Cabinet notes the position of the availability of capital resources as detailed in Table 4, paragraph 8.6, and the requirement to keep the capital programme under review for affordability. And that Cabinet is asked to note the position of the Treasury management activity as at the end of December 2023. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Lucas, thank you. And can I have a seconder? Councillor Thomas, thank you. We'll move to the debate. And as there's no debate, we'll move to the vote.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Item number 13 is the third quarter review budget monitoring 23-24, and I'll hand over to Ian Cooper to present.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'll do a brief introduction and answer any questions. Table 3 of the report sets out the various movements on the revenue budget as at the end of December, but in reality kind of incorporates a bit beyond that as well. Quite a few of them relate to staffing underspends. This is where we're kind of struggling to recruit 2 posts. In some cases, we've used some of that money to get an additional resource through temporary staff. But in other examples, in fact, quite a few examples, we're looking at carrying that forward into later years to basically get the work done. So work has slipped because we've got the staff to do it, but we want to get resources there in future years to be able to do it. Note the kind of one area in there with kind of a negative ongoing impact is the fly tipping costs. And the increase in the number and types of fly tips in the district, which is creating an ongoing pressure on our budgets. Obviously, it's a very sad thing, both for financial and just in general perspective that's taking place. The rest of the report kind of takes you through the various bits around sort of the detail around how we're doing against the sort of various savings we've both at the start of the year and how we're spending the carry forward budgets. As ever, we've got our financial health indicators in relation to our income, which is set out in Table 4. As you see, kind of 4 of those are red and 2 of those are green. Obviously, they're pretty much set now in terms of where they'll be at year end, given we're kind of in the last quarter of the year. And then they've got supporting data in Table 5 for some of the kind of the quantitative statistics that support that data. That's my introduction to the report, but obviously there's a lot of detail there, so happy with any questions.
Thank you, Ian. Are there any questions for Ian on the report? Councillor Thomas.
Thanks, Ian. On the fly tipping, do you get a sense that it's increasing in real time or that reporting is increasing? Because I know that there have been some efforts to sort of increase the rates of reporting of things and sort of improving the stewardship piece. Or do you think it is that there is a significant increase in fly tipping?
I'll give you a partial answer. I'm not going to answer it fully. I'll have to get an answer from the teams involved, but this is the cost of clearing it up. So this is real fly tips. So unless they're being cleared up by other parties in the past, then I would presume it's probably to a fair degree in increasing actual incidences of it. But I'll see if I can get a more thorough answer for you.
Thank you both. Councillor Lucas.
Thank you, Chair. What do we put the increase in the number of penalty charge notices being issued towards? Is that due to an increased number of enforcement officers, an active campaign? Are there hotspots that are traditionally being or more rigorously being at least for want of a better word. What's that down to? Thank you.
My general understanding is when we will always target hotspots because that's where bad parking is taking place, particularly where that's having impact on the streets or car parks in our area. So we will target hotspots, but we can only, I guess, catch bad parking if it's happening in the first place, and if it's causing issues in the first place. There is sometimes a bit of correlation between being fully staffed and the number of PCNs being issued, but as I said, you can only catch people bad parking if it's happening. We don't go out to catch people deliberately. We do target hotspots, but we're not there to kind of be too over the top in that. So I guess that's kind of a bit of a I don't know kind of answer, but kind of sort of paints on the picture around the back of it.
You both. Are there any other questions from the committee? If not, one from me, and that's around the leisure centre management fees. Obviously, we're still seeing the direction of trend going up for the number of leisure centre visits. Are we now at the point where we're expecting this to hold around the same number after COVID, or are we still expecting increases?
Well, we're about to enter the new contract from the 1st of April with the new provider. They have got some fairly positive ambitions in relation to the income they'll generate, as we've seen from the budget report to the council the other week. So I think there was obviously a bit of bedding in period to start with, but then they have got some sort of ideas about how to increase uptake in use of our leisure centres, otherwise it won't be generating more income. So I think we will see over time more of an increase in that usage.
Thank you, Ian. Are there any other questions from the committee? If not, the recommendation is that the Finance, Audit and Risk Committee provides comments and recommend to Cabinet the third review budget monitoring 23-24. 2.1, that Cabinet note this report. 2.2, that Cabinet approves the adjustments to the 2023-24 General Fund budget as identified in Table 3 and paragraph 8.2, a 415,000 decrease in net expenditure. That Cabinet approves the changes to the 24-25 General Fund budget as identified in Table 3 and paragraph 8.2, a total of a 411,000 increase in net expenditure. Can I have a proposer? Councillor Thomas, thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Lucas, thank you. We'll now move to debate. Is there any debate on this item? If not, we will now move to the vote.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Now move to item 14, which is possible agenda items for future meetings. So I'd like to ask the committee whether they've got any agenda items that they'd like considered at future meetings. Yes, Councillor Hone.
Thank you. Do we have any which we carried forward from last time on last meeting? There was a number of items. I couldn't see any on the. Let's go back and see in the minutes if we did log any last time round.
Just pulling up minutes now.
Churchgate was one, which was requested. Keep us up to date on that. And the new waste and leisure contracts, monitoring of those two. I think we recommended from the last meeting, which is talk about here, page 11 and 12, Chair.
Sorry, I'm just getting to it. Yes, so I think the waste and leisure contracts said here that said that more detailed information could be provided when the contracts were implemented. So if you're happy, I'm happy for us to put on this agenda item that we roll that over so that when those contracts are implemented, we can receive that information. In terms of Churchgate, I'll hand over to Ian Cooper on that.
Yeah, as I said that earlier, there is work going on in terms of the background work to get to a place where we've got a sort of that detailed plan for what plans to do the site and all that consultancy work going on in that. That's been reported through to project board. There's no kind of financial projections or anything of that ilk to bring to you yet, but as and when we're at that stage, definitely we'll bring that to this committee to consider and see kind of alongside overview and scrutiny, because obviously it could be some big numbers involved.
Councillor Hone.
Yeah, thank you, Ian and Chair. Yeah, I think what we're saying here is let's carry these things forward, and when we do have details of what exactly the leisure contract's going to be and exactly what the waste contract's going to be and the impact that's going to have on the numbers, we'd be very interested. And also when we put some numbers against Churchgate, then we need to be able to see those if we can, please, and make sure we're going down the right road with that particular project. So that's what I'm suggesting to you, Chair, is that they would keep those on the agenda, understanding, of course, that they may not be the ones the next time round.
That's absolutely fine. Thank you, Councillor Hone. Are there any other suggested agenda items for future meetings? If not, thank you very much all for tonight. Thank you to everybody who has come along and presented. The time is 20:51 and I am going to close the meeting.